Let's take our next step, and we're going to disassemble the garage door springs. Now, before we do that, there's some tools that you're going to need. You're going to need a 3/8 wrench, you're going to need a 1/2 inch wrench, a 7/16 wrench, a 9/16 wrench, and possibly a 9/16 socket or an adjustable wrench. Usually the set screws on the springs are either 3/8 or 7/16. That's the most common sizes, with 3/8 being the most common size. We're going to unload the tension from the spring that's not broken, and we want to do this in a safe manner. So first of all, you'd like to have a pair of safety goggles, and you want to have those on just in case. Protect the eyes, are the only two eyes I have. The most important tool that we need today are our winding bars. And these are the bars that we're going to insert into the holes in the spring to unwind this spring safely and to rewind the new spring safely. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the bar is the proper size. In this case, this hole requires a 1/2 inch bar. So we want to make sure that the bar fits properly. We're going to slide it into the hole, make sure that it fits, it'll go all the way in the hole, and that it's secure. It's not unusual to have some play in it, but you want to make sure that it's secure. So now that we know we've got the right winding bars, let's unwind this spring. So I'm going to securely put the bar into the spring. Now in this particular case, the tension is going to want to pull down towards the door. So I'm going to put support against the rod. I'm going to make sure that it's fully into the spring cone. And I'm going to put some pressure on it, and I'm going to loosen the set screws. And I'm going to back the set screws far enough out that they're not going to drag around this torsion bar at all. Okay, now you may have been able to see, but the load just came onto the rod, and you can see how much load is there. I want to make sure my set screws are good and loose and give you an idea what kind of tension's there. That'll give you a good idea how much tension is there. And what we're going to do is we're going to unwind it 1/4 turn at a time. So I'm going to insert the bar into this hole, lift up, pull this rod out, bring it down, rest it against the door, lift up, bring it down, rest it against the door, and we're going to repeat this until the spring is unwound. Okay, now that I've got the spring fully unwound, a common thing that happens, these torsion bars are hollow. So when these set screws get tightened down, sometimes the person who previously set the spring tightens the set screws down tight, and the shaft is now a little bit out of round. So it's hung up on the shaft. So what I'm going to do, it's unwound, but I'm going to hold this bar in the spring cone, and I'm going to knock this free. All right, now that it's free, if you look right up here, you can see the indentations that were left in the torsion bar. So there's a little bit of tension left on the spring from where it retracted. I'm going to take the rest of the tension off. It's only going to be maybe about a turn and a half of tension. And now all the tension is off the spring, and this is now safe to work with. This bar is completely free. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to move our ladder over here to the center. We're going to unbolt the springs from the center bearing support. Now that we're set up to unbolt the springs, we're going to use a 9/16 wrench. And we're going to unbolt the springs. It really doesn't matter which one you do first. And we're going to loosen the bolts and then remove them. Don't throw these away, you'll need them. Now this one's going to be a little bit tricky because when the spring broke, the end of the wire actually went over and is pushing against the bolt. So we're going to unwind it from this other side where it's freer. Okay. Now that we've got that loose, remember we haven't touched this spring yet other than measure it. So we're going to loosen the set screws on this spring. And we're going to slide it off towards the end of the door. Okay, now we're going to move to the other end of the door. This spring, you noticed before when we went to unwind it, was a little bit difficult because the set screws have left indentations in the shaft right here. So we're going to use a little bit of silicone spray. And going to spray this right here, and we'll see if this one will slide with the silicone spray. If not, we may have to get out the file. Nope, that's not going to slide. So, an optional tool that you want to have handy is a file. File the burrs off the shaft. Okay, now let's try it again and see if she'll slide across there. And you can see it slides right across now. Now that we've got the springs disconnected from the center bearing plate and slid out towards the ends, the next step is to take the cable drums loose, which is what the cables roll up on. Now, I don't want these cables to fall down next to the door, so I'm going to take this cable and wrap it right through the top bracket like that, so it'll hold it in place. And I'm going to loosen the set screws on this cable drum. Now hopefully when I loosen them, this cable drum will slide freely, and in this case it does. But just to help ensure that it's a little bit easier to slide back and forth, I'm going to hit it with a file. And I'm going to take the burrs off of it. File the burrs on it, and I'm going to spray it with some silicone on both sides. And now there's two ways to attack this portion of it. If this shaft will slide back and forth from side to side easily, I'm going to slide it from one side to the other. So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the shaft left, which will allow me access to the spring on the other end, and I'll swap that spring on the shaft first. So let's see if it'll slide freely. If it won't slide freely, then these two bolts right here hold this bearing plate in place, and we'll have to take those bolts loose and remove the bearing plate. So let's see if it's cooperative. And the answer to cooperative is kind of. But if you look over at the other side now, you'll see where the shaft has come out of the bearing, and we have access to that spring. You can see that we were able to slide the shaft over to the other side, and the shaft is now free from the bearing plate, which will allow us access in order to swap the broken spring out with the new spring. So the first thing I'm going to do is do what I did on the other side. I'm going to tie the cable up so it doesn't fall down. Every little work saver I can use. And then I'm going to take the set screws loose on this particular cable drum. And it slid right off pretty easy, so we're in good shape. Now, just to make my life a little bit easier, I'm going to file this where the set screws are to remove any burrs. And I'm also going to spray it with some silicone to help the spring slide off easier and help this slide back into the bearing easier. So now that we've got that sprayed, let's slide our spring. Look at that, it slides off nice and easy. Now I like to make noise, so we're going to drop this right there on the floor. And if you take a look at this spring and you look at how it's made, it goes around to the left. So we're confirming that this is your left-hand spring or your black spring. It goes counterclockwise.